What's up, everybody? Feeling extra hipstery today with my hipster stash and my 5-panel hat on forward bill flat. I'm sure you all will have some feelings about that in the comments. But today we are diving back into the Gilgo Beach case and the suspect, specifically Rex Heuermann, because after last week's video where we took our first look at this case, and the defense attorney said it was a largely circumstantial case, meaning most of the evidence was circumstantial instead of direct. A lot of you had questions about that. What's the difference? There's DNA, there's video. I thought that was direct evidence. So today we're going to take a quick look and explain what the difference is between direct and circumstantial evidence. And we're also going to apply it to the evidence that we know exists in this case. We're going to look at some of it together from that same bail document that we discussed in last week's video. So if you are one that is still interested in this case, I shouldn't say still, is interested in it because it's relatively new to our channel, hit that like button and let me know in the comments, and we will continue to cover it. I'm recording this on the weekend because, as you know, I'll be on vacation next week. I'll be looking in and probably doing some videos and stuff. We're hoping our first day in the life short will come out. We've got some other things planned, maybe our 250K celebration if we can get it edited in time. So hit that reminder bell and subscribe if you haven't already to all the videos that are going to be coming out this week, even though I'm on vacation, because the content is still coming. I enjoy it. You enjoy it. So let's have fun doing it, right? And keep the positivity in the comments. And disagreements are cool, but tearing people down does no good. So I don't think we need to do any of that. Let's just try to keep it as positive and enlightening and educational as possible. So let's talk about direct versus circumstantial evidence. And I think the best way to do that is describing it and giving examples. So one of the ways I'm going to describe it is by using a jury instruction. And this seems pretty simple and obvious, but this is what we read to juries when we try to explain it to them when they have to make a decision when looking at evidence and getting a verdict in a case. Evidence may be direct or circumstantial. Direct evidence is direct proof of a fact, such as the testimony of an eyewitness. Circumstantial evidence, sometimes called inferences, consists of a chain of circumstances pointing to the existence of certain facts. Circumstantial evidence is based upon deductions or logical conclusions that you reach from the direct evidence. So I think this is an important indication that certain things can be direct evidence of a fact, but it's not necessarily direct evidence of the fact that the defendant committed the crime. And I think that's something where people get confused. So some examples of direct evidence that the defendant committed the crime. And people's first inclination is always, well, we can't expect this to be in every case. Sure, but it does happen. It happens in a lot of cases where there is either a video recording of the defendant committing the crime, an audio recording, undercover tapes of the defendant admitting the crime or committing whatever the crime is, right? And confessions and things like that. An eyewitness. I saw the defendant commit this crime. I saw Rex Heuermann in this case do this to these girls, take them to the beach and bury them. That would be direct evidence. That doesn't exist in this case, as far as I know. That would be direct evidence. And then usually this would be considered direct evidence if you can match a bullet with the murder weapon. If you can put or match the defendant's fingerprints on that weapon as well. That is usually direct evidence. Okay? Because it directly proves that the defendant probably committed this crime, right? So then when we talk about circumstantial evidence, a video of the defendant fleeing the scene, DNA at the crime scene, DNA, like in this case, on the tape or the burlap sacks or the belt in this case. Sorry, not tape. That's Brian Koberger's case. I'm sorry, that's Lori Vallow's case, not Brian Koberger's case. Koberger's case, DNA at the scene, circumstantial evidence. The hairs connected to the defendant's wife. In this case, circumstantial evidence. Right? You understand why. Because it's circumstances that we can draw inferences from that would make us think, why would that happen if he didn't commit this crime? Not directly proving that he committed the crime. Other circumstantial evidence. We know the defendant was at the location. If something happened at a party and the defendant was one of the people at that party, that's circumstantial evidence. Doesn't mean he did it, but he had the opportunity. Same thing in this case. We know the defendant's wife and kids were out of town on the date ranges where all of these crimes when these crimes were committed. Circumstantial evidence. Those are circumstances that could lead us to believe a specific fact. Can be incredibly important. It's the same thing when we talk about it in jury selection and we say direct evidence would be video of it snowing or raining outside, usually is what we use in Florida. Video of it raining outside. That proves it was raining outside. But circumstantial evidence is the ground is wet. People put their umbrellas down. People's clothes are wet. Circumstantial evidence, right? We didn't see the rain, but we can infer it based on those facts. And I think it's important for us to remember this as we look at things, that circumstantial evidence can be incredibly strong and can prove a case. Direct evidence is usually stronger, but some people would say the hairs are direct evidence. In this case, I would call it more circumstantial, but if you're going to call them direct evidence with the DNA match, some direct evidence can be weak or circumstantial evidence, because if the hair was diminished and the DNA wasn't perfect, or like the DNA in Koberger's case, touch DNA, experts can really pick that apart. So even certain evidence that seems stronger can be picked apart. So just because you have direct evidence doesn't mean it's always over. Just because you have circumstantial evidence doesn't mean your case is weak. It's a way to say it, like the defense lawyer did in the press conference. And then here's another example I want to just kind of talk through. We're going to scroll through some of the pictures in the bail document that gives us some of the facts of the case. And let me see if I can zoom in a little on this. So these pictures from a camera, right? This is direct evidence that he walked into this cell phone store. Direct evidence that he bought something with cash. I think they said minutes, could be a burner phone because allegedly he's got a bunch of burner phones. This is direct evidence that he bought minutes or that he bought a phone, whatever it is they're using it to prove. I don't even know. I can't remember. I read this yesterday. So that is direct evidence that he made that purchase with cash, not direct evidence of the crime. So direct evidence of this fact that he purchased minutes or a phone can be then circumstantial evidence that he committed the crime. Using these as examples so we can kind of learn how lawyers build their cases with the help, of course, of investigators and law enforcement that gather these facts for them. One fact stacked on top of another fact can turn into some very compelling evidence that directs you towards a verdict, even if it is not direct evidence. Additionally, we have the search terms. This is direct evidence that he was searching about the case. This is direct evidence that he pulled up articles about the task force and he was looking into this investigation. The direct evidence of those facts is circumstantial evidence to get to proof that the crime was committed by this defendant. And when you look at a lot of what the evidence is in this case, the searches, the opportunity with his family being out of town, the cell phone pings that he was in certain locations at certain times, that he was arguably close to where the crimes were committed, close to where the victim's cell phones were, close to where the bodies were found, drove the car that was used. That's all circumstantial evidence because it's putting together circumstances that make it possible, probable, more likely than not, maybe beyond a reasonable doubt, that Rex Heuermann committed these crimes. That's what the state is trying to do, putting together this circumstantial evidence. And the reason it's circumstantial is because thousands of people drove avalanches back in the day. Thousands of people live in that area where the victims' phones were. There were probably thousands of cell phones that were just as close as the defendants. Thousands of people were probably on those beaches that night. Thousands of people had their wife and children out of town. Maybe not on all of those dates, but at least on some of the dates. Thousands of people probably I don't know about thousands, probably thousands if the world is a sicker place than I think, have burner phones. Thousands of people pay cash. So when you think about how all this worked, that's why it's considered circumstantial. But when you start to hit the same guy over and over again, 1,000 people were within the vicinity with their cell phone. Okay. Then the group is even smaller who drives avalanches. Okay. The group is even smaller whose families were out of town. And then, of course, the smallest group, 99.9% accuracy, whose own hair and wife's hair was connected to where the bodies were found. So that's how you kind of start big and work your way in. And I believe we're kind of getting there as well in Kohberger. At least the state's trying to get there by doing the same thing. We have a car and a launcher. We have cell phone pings. We have the cell phone turned off. We have DNA at the scene. We have the fact that he was in the location and that he had been there before, right? Because if you start how many Elantras there are, we know because we were living it together when they were going through that and searching for the car. So we know there were plenty of Elantras. But then to narrow it down, you start thinking about, well, how many people's cell phones were in the area? How many people's cell phones have been in the area in the past? And then, of course, the big kicker that we've talked about the whole time is the touch DNA. How do you explain the fact that that is at the house on the knife sheath, which we are, inferring is part of or connected to the murder weapon based on the explanation and description of the murder weapon? So all that circumstantial evidence, while it is technically circumstantial, same thing with Murdoch. We know he was there before. We know he was there after. We know he has guns. We can't find the guns, but we know he has them. We know he lied about where he was before. We know he lied about where he was during. All of those things are circumstances that would lead us to believe he committed the crime. So just because the defense attorney calls this case largely circumstantial, just because it doesn't seem like at this point there's a lot of direct evidence that Rex Heuermann did this, doesn't mean the state can't prove its case. Doesn't mean the state's case is weak. Doesn't mean it's strong, of course, but that was most of the questions I got. Does that mean it's a super weak case? Does that mean they're going to lose? Now, I will say, combining a largely circumstantial case with a 13-year delay does create issues. But that's why I think they have stacked so many layers of circumstantial evidence on top of each other to where they've got a lot. It really seems like they've got a lot. We'll see how it's presented. We'll see what the defense can come up with. We'll see what holes the defense can poke. But it seems like they're on their way to being confident in proving this case beyond reasonable doubt. Let me know what you think. Give me some examples of what you think direct evidence is versus circumstantial evidence. Let me know if you think it's strong based on this case. Why don't we compare? Rank them 1, 2, and 3. Murdoch, Kohberger, and Heuermann on how you feel the circumstantial evidence is stacking up so far, because I know those are 3 of the cases where that has been highlighted front and center by the defense teams that this is a circumstantial evidence case. The truth is the vast majority of cases that go to trial are circumstantial cases. So it shouldn't be a surprise. And this shouldn't be something that when we hear this come up in the future, you'd be like, wow, that means they don't have a very strong case. Let's just remember that together. Now, if we remember going through Murdoch's trial, I didn't think it was the strongest case. So it can go either way. The jury did, right? So as we know, some of you think it's not very strong in Kohberger. Some of you think it is very strong. And people can kind of disagree. But circumstantial evidence does not always mean weak. That's one of the big things I wanted to just kind of make sure we cover, and to give the examples and to give you a definition that lawyers give to jurors to help them understand and decide things based on circumstantial evidence. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you learned something, let me know by hitting that like button. Until the next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.